Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. And today what I want to do is make an oak garland. I would like some decor for the fall and especially for Thanksgiving. So to start, what I did is I just took a walk in nature and I found some oak leaves that were different sizes and slightly different shapes. And once I had found some leaves that I liked, I brought them home. And what I have here is just a brown paper bag, which I have opened up. And I'm going to trace some of the leaves in pencil onto the brown paper bag. And once traced, I cut them out. I did then iron the leaves and I ironed the rest of the brown paper bag. I didn't get the wrinkles completely out, and I don't think it's really important that you get the wrinkles out because these are leaves, but I did want it to be just a little bit flatter. Now, I cut 16 leaves total. Right here I have 8 that I'm working with. And I also have some gold paddle wire, which I got in the florist section at the Dollar Tree. It's very fine paddle wire. And what I'm doing is I'm going to cut some pieces of the wire to be the stem and the veins of the leaf. So for the stem piece, I'm going to cut that longer than the length of the leaf because I'm going to use this to wrap around the cord for the garland. And then I'm going to cut a few smaller pieces to go down the branches of the leaf. Now here what I'm doing is I'm putting Mod Podge on the leaf, and then I'm putting the stem pieces into the Mod Podge. I did later find it a little bit easier to put just a few small pieces of tape onto the wire to hold it onto the leaf, and then I put Mod Podge over that. And so then for each leaf, once I had it with the wire attached and Mod Podged, I just put it down onto the paper bag and then I cut it out. So when you're doing this, you just want to make sure that any pattern is on the inside of your leaf. And when you're done, you'll have a leaf which is brown paper bag on each side, so 2 layers, with the wires inside glued together with the Mod Podge, and there should be a stem, which is a wire stem, extending from the bottom of the leaf. And you should be able to see those wires through a little bit, giving it a little bit of natural looking texture. Now to paint the leaves, I'm doing something that is maybe a little bit more fantastic than natural, but it has a little bit of a natural feel to it. So I wanted something that was white and gold, basically, because this is going to go on a brown piece of furniture that I have. So I'm going to start by tapping with a stenciling brush some white acrylic paint over both sides of all of the leaves. And when I did this, I found that I liked the look the best if I got some paint on the brush and didn't get it off as I normally would, but tapped it very lightly over the leaf. And this gave some very distinct white spots on the leaf. And then as the paint started to come off of the brush, I would tap a little bit harder, which gave me a more muted, softer look. So I liked that mix of the white spots with the softer white areas. And I didn't cover the entire leaf. I wanted to let a little bit of the brown paper show through. Again, I did that on both sides. After all of the white paint was dry, I did basically the same thing with brown. I have here Deco Americana in Mississippi Mud, which is a very light brown, and then I have Apple Barrel Burnt Umber, which is a darker, deeper brown. And I did half the leaves with the Mississippi Mud and half the leaves with the Burnt Umber. So what I did with these is tapped them over the top of the white, just in some areas, so sort of blotches of these colors. With the Burnt Umber, because it is such a strong color, I did a little bit less, and I did get it off the brush a little bit more before I started tapping it over. And again, I did that on both sides. And then what I did, again, the Mississippi Mud leaves, I did this with Mississippi Mud, and with the Burnt Umber leaves, I did this with Burnt Umber. I took a little bit of paint onto a flat brush and then brushed it along the edge of the leaf, so across the edge toward the center of the leaf, to give it just a border of this sort of brown color, but very light. And I did that on both sides for each leaf. The final color that I tapped over the leaf was gold, and the gold that I'm using is this bronze metal gold. I will link all the paints in the description. I think gold is a very festive color, and I thought it would really make these leaves look special. So I just, again, used a stenciling brush and tapped the gold over the leaves, both sides, all over the leaf, so over both the brown and the white. And then my final step for the leaves was to give them veins. So I used a very, very fine pointed brush, and I very lightly drew veins on the leaf with the Mississippi mud. Now I did that for all of the leaves, even the ones I had colored with burnt umber. And I didn't worry when I was doing this if you couldn't see the lines in some places, because I really wanted this to be light. When I was experimenting with this, I did some heavier lines on some leaves that I was experimenting with, and it just did not look good. So I think what you want to achieve here is a very fine, light line, but I think you absolutely do want the veins on the leaves, because I do not think they look as good without the veins. This makes them look a little bit more realistic, even though they're gold. Once I had all of my leaves, I attached them to this wired jute cord that I got at the Dollar Tree. I've been looking for this, and it came back to one of my local Dollar Trees, so I bought a few of these, and this is 7.5 feet. So what I did was, just because my leaves have wire stems, I just wired them along this jute cord, and as I said, I made 16 leaves. I wanted a sparse look. Now you might want a more full look. I wanted a sparse look. I'm going to put this on a table where I already have a faux cedar garland, and so I wanted this to sort of punctuate and accentuate that other garland. And 16 leaves does not cover the full 7.5 feet for the density that I want. I'd say I got about 6 feet out of this. Now I want to add some acorns. So I went out to a local parking lot where I have found acorns before, and I found all of these acorn hats. I'm hoping the squirrels got all of the acorns. This is going to work out quite well because I want to wire these along the jute cord along with the leaves. So what I'm going to do first is drill 2 holes close together with a very tiny drill bit into each of these acorn hats, and then I'm going to take more of my gold paddle wire and put it from the outside into one hole and then from the inside out the other hole, and then twist it together. So each of these will have a wire attached to them. Now if you actually have a bunch of acorns that you want to do this with, then I would recommend pull the acorns out of the hats, drill the holes, put the wire through, and then glue the acorns back in the hats. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make faux acorns with homemade air dry clay. So for that, I'm going to need baking soda and cornstarch and water, and it's 2 parts baking soda to 1 part cornstarch and 1 part water. Although what you can see here is that recipe, and I actually did add more water. And then off screen, I heat that over medium heat. I do have a 2-minute technique on making homemade air dry clay. It's very quick. Soon it will start to form into clay, and then once it's the right consistency, just take it off the heat and you're all set. You can knead it with more cornstarch if you want to. This was a really good recipe because none of the acorns that I made cracked. So what I'm now going to do is just take little pieces of this, roll it into balls, and stick them into the acorn hats. Making sure they look roughly like acorns, and you can always use a little bit of water to smooth them over if they're not perfectly smooth. And then I'm just going to use some white glue, school glue, PVA glue, to glue them into the hats. Now I know that's not optimal, probably better for me to let them dry first, but I didn't want to try to keep track of which piece of clay went with which hat. So I just put some glue all the way inside the hat, both the sides and the bottom, and then stuck my faux acorn in, and I let them dry overnight. So in the morning I painted them, and I decided to paint them 2 different ways. So for one set, I have an acorn here. When I picked up the hats, I did pick up 1 acorn. And you can see what it looks like. It's this beautiful sort of reddish brown, but it has darker brown, almost stripes coming up from the bottom. So that's what I'm going to do for half of the acorns. So I mixed together some of the burnt umber and the Mississippi mud and some red. And I came up with a color that I liked for the acorns. It doesn't quite match the color of the acorn that I had from the parking lot. I think a little bit more yellow would have been closer, but again, I was happy with this color. And I painted half the acorns with that mixture. Then I took the burnt umber and that very fine brush that I have, and I drew some lines up from the hat towards the center top of the acorn in different lengths next to each other. Now the other acorns are going to be a little bit more complicated. So for these, I want to have sort of white and gold acorns. So I'm going to paint the acorn part a white color, and I'm using Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in sheepskin, which is slightly yellowish white. If you want to just mix up a color like this, you can use some acrylic white with a tiny bit of yellow mixed in. And I know they're already white because the air dry clay is white, but it's sort of translucent looking. So I just painted the acorns with that paint. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bronze metal again. And I want to get almost an ombre from the hat up the acorn. So using that sort of stripe idea, but with gold this time and a little bit more muddied. So what I did was I painted a circle of the bronze metal around the acorn, but at the hat, and then dragged it up toward the center. I did wait for the white to dry before I did this. And if there wasn't enough paint, I just added a little paint so that I got a nice, again, ombre sort of look from the hat to the center of the acorn. And then the hats, I don't like the color of the hat for what I want to do here, so I painted the hats themselves with the burnt umber. And I let that dry completely. And then I took a little bit of the bronze metal onto the flat brush, got most of it off, and brushed it over the hat. So the hat has a lot of texture, so this just picked up the texture of the hat. And I think that I ended up with acorns that look almost like they're made of metal. I really love the look that I got. And it was really fun just sort of experimenting with colors until I came up with a look for the acorns that I liked. So I would say, if you don't love these, but you think maybe they're on the right track, experiment with these different colors or with your own ideas, and I'll bet you'll come up with something really cool. Tell me about it in the comments if you do. I'd love to hear about it. So you might have noticed that the acorn from the parking lot was kind of shiny. So I'm definitely going to seal these with some matte Mod Podge. Even though it's called matte Mod Podge, I'd say it has a sort of satin finish. Not exactly shiny, but satin. So for the brown acorns, I am just going to put the Mod Podge over the brown part. I want to leave the hats natural. But for the white and gold acorns, I'm going to put the Mod Podge entirely over the acorns. And what I did to dry them was I set up some little jars of paint with a bamboo skewer between them, and because these have wire on them, I could just wrap the wire around the bamboo skewer, and if I hung them at different heights, I could dry quite a few acorns that way. Once the Mod Podge was completely dry on the acorns, then I just added them to the garland, and I thought they looked best in clusters of 2 at the base of some of the leaves, and I alternated the brown and the white. So here's the finished garland. I'm pleased with it. I'm very happy to put this out on Thanksgiving. I would love to know what you think. If you would have painted any of these things, the leaves or the acorns, differently, I would love to know your ideas. Please tell me in the comments. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today, and happy Thanksgiving. Take care.